Hello and welcome to the 42 Six Nations Show. We're joined by Trevor Hogan again this week to reflect on Ireland's campaign. We're going to look specifically at their defence. A few issues to sort out for Andy Farrell coming in as defence coach early next month. We're also going to talk about Ireland's carry and we'll reflect on the possibilities for selection in South Africa. Big calls for Joe Schmidt ahead. Trevor, thanks for coming in. I mean, what's your impression of this campaign overall? Looking back now, they've had 2 wins, a draw, 2 defeats. They scored plenty of tries. They've probably conceded too many, but what's your big takeaway?
Yeah, it's fairly solid. I think there's some amount of negativity going around that I couldn't really get my head around. And on reflection, I still think there's lots of positives there. I suppose a lot of it depends on your own personal, natural perspective, whether you're going to look for negatives. But you know, to only barely lose to France, that was the game that really, probably on reflection, cost the opportunity to have the momentum to be really challenging. And you know, there was really small margins that were in it, and a lot of it's down to scrum and maybe set piece, and there's a lot of hysteria around offloading at times, which I don't think is the actual issue. It's much more nuanced than that, and there's more specifics that they can look at to fix, especially going into South Africa.
Yeah, I actually think the offloading issue is probably overblown a little bit. England actually didn't offload a lot. Yeah. I actually thought the way they went about winning the Grand Slam kind of echoed what Joe Schmidt did in his first year with Ireland. Real solid defensive, keep the ball, kick really well. And they probably were the deserving Grand Slam winners, do you think?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, they were lethal in it, but they weren't doing they weren't doing anything that's different much to what Ireland are doing. Billy Vunipola, Danny Kerr, real high tempo. Watson, obviously lethal finisher. Just small things that were different, but the scrum and the set piece for me was crucial in the early games. And possibly some things in defence that we'll probably look at in a minute. Yeah,
let's dive straight in there. Andy Farrell's coming in. His contract starts on the 1st of April Fool's Day. I thought it was a joke actually from the Ireland management at first. They were kind of laughing about it. He's finished with Munster. I don't know what exactly he did down there, but didn't seem to affect the results too much. But he comes in with a really strong reputation. There are issues, I don't know if that's the right word, there are little things that he needs to fix. And we're going to look maybe at the try that Scotland scored through Richie Gray here. They beat Ireland over to the opposite side of the pitch and they came back and Laidlaw hit Weir, and it was Rory Best set up here initially. It was Andrew Trimble coming across to actually fill the line. I don't know if the communication was really strong there, because Rory Best shoots up here on Weir, and straight away Gray can just go straight into that gap. Now ideally you'd probably have Best shooting up on Gray, Trimble up here, and Jared Payne closing off here, and then it makes it a really difficult pass, or 2 passes to actually get out to the outside edge. Now they had a big overlap, but still you want to manage those situations better. Just chatting to you beforehand, you thought maybe Ireland committed too much to that initial ruck. Maybe.
Yeah, I think we kind of sometimes tend to panic, or maybe there's just even a lack of chat about how hard we commit to this ruck. You know, it's really crucial that you keep your scanning and your spacing right when you are under pressure and you're close to the line like that, because every body will count. And I think we saw Trimble really working hard. The work ethic and the work rate is massive. Like the likes of Trimble and Earls, Trimble worked really hard to get around. But I think it was Earls committed hard to try and get the counter ruck, and we committed an extra about 4 or 5 bodies into trying to barge that, which I know Joe Schmidt puts a lot of emphasis on. But if you do that, you're just going to be hurt out wide. And even before that, we had like 4 guys inside the first receiver, so they were taken out fairly quickly. So it's how we manage the numbers and being clever in how we identify who's going into the ruck, who's going to counter, and just getting our spacing right off that, because it can be easy to kind of blame Rory Best there. You know, he probably should have stayed straight and like you're saying, forced them. But if there's so many bodies in there, we're going to be under serious pressure for not chatting.
He's in an awful position, Rory Best. You kind of feel from there. But that commitment to the ruck, like it didn't just happen against Scotland. We can pick out these little things and say, oh look, it's just an isolated incident. But that actually happened against Wales in the first game, where they almost scored in the outside edge, and Andrew Trimble made a try-saving tackle. Guys hammering into that ruck. Is it about just maybe, and maybe Andy Farrell will bring this, and more of awareness maybe of, okay, let's really identify our opportunity here?
Yeah, I think so. And it's just about being cool under pressure. That, you know, the urgency is great, and he'll be hugely positive with the attitude to disrupt their ball, to get up off your feet and to commit. But it's happening a few times where we are scrambling and we're working hard to try and stop it at source at the ruck, but it's costing us out wide, and the better teams will be able to shift that ball a lot quicker, maybe even than Scotland were able to do there. And like Argentina did, if we don't have our heads up and scan, I think that's the first thing Farrell will be talking about. We did look really quiet there as well during that phase. Now we were sucking diesel, but it looked like everyone had their heads down and were looking in at the ruck. Just a little bit of chat is massive there, and it just gets lads to push out, give yourself that half a yard extra, and you can maybe force them to go right to the edge.
Yeah. One extra guy, and then Payne's out here, you got one extra body in the middle, and then you can actually hammer and blitz up and actually make a difference, because Payne can get up and cover that passing behind to Stuart Hogg.
Exactly, and you were mentioning that one again that Trimble did, and I think Earls did one as well against Wales early on. They were able to read that. We have some really good defensive reads, especially with Jared Payne. You know, the ability to smash and to identify when it's coming, when it's on to go hard. You know, have the confidence in the lads to do that and not overcommit there to getting the barge.
Yeah, like it's happened out the pitch as well a little bit, I think. There was one really good example in the second half where Jared Payne shot up out of the line actually, and he smashed Duncan Weir ball and all on one of those kind of screenplays. But that only happened because Ireland actually had their numbers. They had numbered up really well. A few guys had come over, folded over from the other side of the ruck. But that, again, it doesn't seem to be a really consistent aspect of their play, that they are numbering up really well. And this actually goes back to Les Kiss. I remember during the World Cup he said, look, sometimes we're not numbering up, guys maybe don't have their heads up. So I think for Andy Farrell coming in, that's the big work on.
Yeah, definitely. But it's great to have that, you know, that attitude that's there. It's happening quite often. And I suppose losing Les Kiss, I thought that Joe would be able to fulfill, and he, you know, but there's so little time and he's got so much to work on in terms of the attack. He was able to do it with Leinster, cover all those aspects, but it may be a little bit much then to have the same voice covering all those things in defence, and having Andy Farrell in to help out with that while he's working on backline attack or our shape. It will just take the pressure off a little bit, and lads will have that extra voice in the back of their heads, knowing that they have to watch that scanning and stuff.
Yeah, I think Joe Schmidt did actually mention that. He said he's been a little bit stretched, and like you can only imagine the amount of analysis he does.
He was able to do it with Leinster. He had them every day, but like you have to squash everything into a couple of weeks. So it must be just intense.
Yeah. Just before we move on, talk about being a player in that position around the ruck. Let's say that Tim Swinson has made that carry, and you're in here.
Yeah.
Like, what's your decision-making process?
Well, if you, I think it's the tackler. He's got the first job. If he can get up and maybe go for the poach, fair enough. Or I think ideally what you're looking, the tackler gets in there, he can get up and he can go straight for the barge, the counter ruck. So you're not really exposing that opportunity for a ref to penalise you. You go straight through and maybe.
Barge, we're talking just hammer into the
ground
front.
That's what they got, the chop and then the barge. So the chop can be done by the actual tackler himself, and the barge by himself as well when he gets up, or the closest defender, whoever it was. It looked like it could have been Trimble there or Earls that time, and he just barges through and leaves the steal then for the next guy, if he can get it. But it looks like there's 2 or 3 guys actually going for that barge, going for that counter ruck. When you maximum you need maybe 1. Okay, so when you're having that many in on it, it's just really putting pressure on you outside there. Okay,
well, there's loads of examples maybe for Joe and Andy Farrell coming in to actually work with the players on that. I think Schmidt mentioned that they might actually get a week together because the provinces aren't in the Champions Cup quarterfinals or semi-finals, which obviously is a blow because they're not playing that kind of high-level rugby, but if it means Ireland get a week together, that's great. So another one of the points we spoke about a little bit has been Ireland's carry. Hasn't always been perfect, or that's to be expected against big teams, but one of the things you want to point out was maybe the angles carriers are coming on.
Yeah, I think the carry is going to be massive in South Africa as well. Obviously, they're really big defenders, aggressive line speed. There have been times when Ireland's carry has been really good, really positive, but other times there's areas they can kind of tighten up on. There's generally kind of a couple of shapes off 9 that you'd have. Most teams would have them when they're coming back against the grain. They'll have a pot of 3, or if you're coming around the corner, you might have 2 and 1 hidden behind, waiting for the ball back inside. But both times, whoever is carrying the ball needs to be looking at getting a kind of like an outside arc. So whoever it is carrying, he's looking to step outside the first receiver, the defender here. He's looking to step outside them with a bit of footwork and tie in possibly this guy here to come in, and he can free him for a possible offload, and it just means the clear out is easier. Okay. Otherwise, if sometimes when Ireland's carry isn't great, the ball carrier is looking at he's stepping back inside here where they're stronger. And it's easier as well, like you're saying, for the inside defender to get over the ball. You know, if you do that, and it's also harder for the clear out for these guys, your supporters, they're having to adjust back in here. You know, it's just going to be slower ball. But the man who's brilliant at doing it is Stander. He's just awesome. And Heaslip as well. Is that footwork, that little arc off 9, and I think it was Rory Best in this instance.
Yeah.
He just gets the feet out, that outside arc, gets outside the first defender, and it gives an easier clear out. I think it was Donncha Ryan and possibly Dev Toner, just to get a quick clear out, quick blow past, and it's set up then for Sexton to feed Heaslip for that brilliant breakthrough to O'Donnell. So it's
a tiny detail, but
yeah,
it makes a world of difference.
It's a huge difference. And we got turned over, I think it was maybe Rory Best and Tommy O'Donnell early, or is in the first half, where they're carrying off 9. They're just under pressure, maybe a bit flat, taking it, and they're stepping back inside to where they're strong. And Ross Ford, I think, gets 1 steal, and there was another steal as well. So it's just a small detail, but I think if the ball carrier can work on that footwork to get outside that first receiver, it frees you up so much. It frees up, if it is a ruck, it frees you up for a quicker ball, or it also makes this guy tie in and a possible little tip on, like we saw Donncha Ryan do in the opening minute, to Stander, because we're going to need that little variation against South Africa. If we're running back in hard where they're strong, you're going to get eaten alive. And I have a feeling if Stander is carrying some of those, they're going to go after him to kill him, because it's the South African thing. So you got to work with those little variations, little tip-ons, little balls out behind the back, but we got to be able to get outside rather than back inside.
Yeah, because like one of the reference points for Ireland going away is New Zealand's win over South Africa in the World Cup semi-final. I think, like it was poor conditions. New Zealand played a really focused game plan. They kicked the ball 33 times, which was a peak for them in the World Cup. I think Namibia were the only team who kicked more in a single game. But also, they actually won that physical contest against South Africa, not by actually smashing into them, but by being smart. Like you're saying, use the footwork, get to the outside, and beat those big, heavy South Africans around the corner next time, or that tip-on pass, which New Zealand do obviously better than anyone.
Yeah.
I certainly believe that Ireland have the forwards to do that more. Donncha Ryan shows it. Obviously, there's less pressure on there. Scotland defence was a little bit passive, but they have those skills.
Oh, I think so. I've heard people giving out about the type 5, but Donncha Ryan, Dev Toner, Rory Best, Jack McGrath, they've all got that ability to give those little plus passes, to give those screens behind the back. But we've also got Heaslip, Stander, O'Brien that can really come around that corner hard with that footwork and get that arc, get outside defenders and really cause teams problems. And you know, that's the beauty of rugby. You've got that variation, got to be able to identify when it's on, and we don't need to start, you know, panicking. Oh God, we're running off 9. It's a disaster. You know, one-out runners. One-out runners is the essence of what rugby is about. Essentially, you got to start off strong there, and then you can go wide afterwards. Every team does it. You know, England did it. Dan Cole, his try, which wasn't a try by the way, that was all off 9. The pressure came, you get the leech on, you get a score. So let's not panic. Let's enjoy the physical confrontation aspect that this needs. But there's also small little detail that we can enjoy looking for, and against South Africa, we're going to need it, I'd say.
Yeah, if you can copy the All Blacks, you're in pretty good shape.
Yeah.
One other thing we want to touch on briefly enough was the set piece. Against the box, that's always key. Like, they'll be targeting our set piece. They'll think they're going to munch our scrum and steal our ball. They'll look at what England did to the Irish line out with George Cruz and Maro Itoje picking off our ball. Yeah. For you, is that a concern maybe going away?
Well, it's got to be something the lads are aware of, I'd say, especially, again, we talk about the 22. I think we lost 3 or 4 against England in and around that area. And when you get there, you got to have that platform. And it's just about reading. I think maybe what was happening that day, Cruz and Itoje were marking the middle and the tail, and we were just a little bit reluctant to go to the front. We've got to be able to, I think, Toner is a brilliant caller, and so is Donncha Ryan. You've got really experienced people there. They'll know that if it's on at the front, we're just going to have to take it. And there was a couple of times they trying to back themselves just to get that, probably to had something on in terms of whether the drive or a possible appeal around the back, that you were forced to actually try and win it there. But ultimately it's about securing the possession, and there's a real knock-on effect if you lose that platform in the 22 and you let teams off the hook throughout the side. You can have a real momentum killer. So it's got to be, you know, absolute bankers in that area of the field that you secure the ball. But generally, I think throughout, like in the last couple of games, obviously Italy and Scotland weren't putting us under as much pressure, but South Africa will be going after us there, so we just really have to be 100% on the button there in that area.
I think it's about being a little bit adaptive maybe, and that probably reflects the Ireland approach in general. Like, got to get those heads up and make the right decisions, and they have done it. Andrew Trimble said after the Scotland match, look, we're actually reading face better, we're making better decisions. So I think the more they can improve on that against a far superior opposition, the better.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of that set piece, we're going to look maybe at possible selections for Joe Schmidt over in South Africa. Obviously, a few months away, and injuries are going to be massive, as they always are. We saw in the Six Nations that your best laid plans mean nothing really. But the scrum is going to be essential. Mike Ross came back in midway through the championship, and he pinned that scrum, didn't he?
Absolutely, yeah. And that's got, it's got to be the bottom line with your front row. And Jack McGrath, Rory Besta and Mike Ross have performed that. Jack McGrath is offering so much as well now. He's just absolute leader at the moment for us. So I don't think you'll see much disruption in that front row. Hopefully Cian Healy will come back now and start pushing as well, because we do need his impacts from the bench, or possibly even starting like he was. But Jack McGrath's fulfilled that role fairly brilliantly, I thought. And I don't see much change there in that front row.
The backup tight head slot is maybe interesting. Nathan White's in there now at the moment. He started the first couple of games. Marty Moore has been the backup, and we thought probably Tyke Furlong was going to push through a bit more in the championship. He seems to have been maybe negatively affected by that France game.
Yeah, he was probably. It was hard. It was a bit of a scapegoat on it. I think the talk was trying to keep straight and keep square as much as possible. When the French started chasing him, maybe he went in after. But I think to pick out one person is very harsh. I thought all the pack need to take that on the chin, all 8, in terms of allowing that to happen. So, the backup is interesting. Who's it going to be? It'll all depend, and I think this will be for the case for the rest of the team, what the form is like in the Pro 12, with injured lads who are injured coming back, with Marty Moore coming back in, with Henderson, hopefully Matt O'Mahony and these lads, how they're playing when they come back, what kind of form they're in, to see who's going to be pushing.
Where do you stand on the backup hooker place? Because I know it's probably one of the things I get tweeted about most often, like, why is Sean Cronin not on the bench? Obviously he always makes an impact when he comes on, and he probably comes on the type of game where he can make an impact, that Schmidt picks him against Italy because he knows his pace is going to be effective there. But Strauss, you can't overlook his solidity. He came on the last day, threw the ball really well, mauled really well, hit the ruck really well. Those things are massive against South Africa.
Yeah, and he's brilliant over the floor as well. There's going to be all those considered. I really like that though. It must be so frustrating for Sean Cronin and Strauss to be in and out and not sure why. But it really keeps people on their toes. It keeps training really fresh, and it keeps lads, just hungry. But a factor against South Africa, I think, remember what the South Africans went out and targeted Strauss. They really went to batter him. Is that going to be a factor? Is it something that we can use in our advantage to have Strauss coming on off the bench, and they're going to be all out gunning for him? Same with Stander, because that's the kind of mindset the South Africans have. You'll have to consider all those factors. With all those things thrown into the mix, probably Strauss would give that solidity. But I just love what Sean Cronin brings, and 3 tests. There's definitely going to be a role for both of them throughout those 3 tests.
Yeah, maybe Sean Cronin at the lower altitude when there's going to be a bit more running.
Things like that.
So we're looking at probably an unchanged front row. Second row is really interesting. Ulton Lance come through obviously in this championship. Toner finished really strongly, and Donncha Ryan hit form again. But the big factor is Ian Henderson. Is he going to come back fit? If he does come back fit and shows the form that he has shown in the Pro 12, where do you see that second row going?
Oh, it's so hard, and we nearly forget how good Mike McCarthy was in the opening 2 games. He's like, we've got so much choice there, and McCarthy is obviously gone, I think, for the rest of the season with that concussion. So it does narrow it down to those 3, but or those 4. It all depends how well Ian Henderson plays when he comes back. I think was it a hip or
it was his hamstring?
Hamstring. They can be killer blows. Like, it affected Healy's pace. We don't know how lads will come back. It's a big challenge to see how explosive he comes back from that, because those 2 lads, Toner and Ryan, I think they've been outstanding in the last couple of games, and the partnership is really taking shape in terms of what Donncha Ryan brings, the engine he has, the aggression and the closeness I feel in the characteristics to O'Connell. I think he's someone you got to have in there. And Devin Toner, obviously, a serious operator. He's one of our better handlers as well, on top of how good he is in the line-out. So for Henderson to come into that mix, he's going to have to produce. It's close to the form he had. It's not an automatic thing, and that's why we're going to be keeping an eye on the Pro 12.
Yeah, it was really interesting. Actually, I read an article about Steve Hansen there recently. He's moved into the mindset that one of your bench options has to be a lock blindside hybrid.
Yeah.
He's actually trying to find a player who can do that. Now Joe Schmidt probably has one ready built in Henderson can do that. But look, if he's back to his outstanding best, I think you got to start him against South Africa, especially with their physicality.
Would you put him in the second row?
I put him in the second row with Devin. I think. I think it's complementary. I think Toner can run that line out. And I just think you need that explosive power, and he's got the footwork and he's got that breakdown.
Well, look, it's great. He has the breakdown work. He's great at the barge as well, and he's so annoying to play against. But I think it'll all come down to we'll see how they play.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, that affects everything. The back row has finished really nicely, and it's come to a nice place. Sean O'Brien, if he's fit again at 7, he's world class, and you have to have him in there, I think. But Sanders really put his marker down, and Peter O'Mahony's a guy who, even at the same time, you say he's missed. We need him back in there. His leadership, his line-out probably as well. How do you get that balance again?
See, it's tricky. Like Heaslip has really stepped up in terms of his defensive line-out work. And he's kind of covered off that strength that O'Mahony has had. So there's massive pressure, I think, on O'Mahony to challenge again. It's so hard to say that, like, because Stander has just been unreal, and that combination there of Stander, Heaslip, and possibly O'Brien, that is some. I would be leaning towards that. Obviously, depending what kind of form O'Mahony is going to be in, but Heaslip and Stander in particular they were all probably best 2 players overall, along with Sexton in the background there. Yeah, it's very hard to see that being changed. Sean O'Brien, pending in form and injuries when he's coming back, he'll definitely, like you said, you put him in at 7, even though Van der Fleer and Tommy O'Donnell did really good jobs, but you'd have O'Brien nailed in at 7, and then you're just looking at how you combine the other 2. But it's going to be so hard for O'Mahony to dislodge.
I think you're leaning towards Sandro. I actually would lean towards Peter O'Mahony.
Yeah.
I just think with his leadership element as well. And
I think that's what will happen. Yeah.
Those 3 in the back row. Halfbacks are pretty much nailed on. I don't think we really need to talk about that too much. It'll be interesting to see if Jackson travels as the second backup, because Schmidt has mentioned, look, Madigan's going away to Bordeaux. He's almost out of the picture. He mentioned Jack Carty. He mentioned other out-halves as well. I think Jackson on the bench will be really interesting. So moving on to centres, pretty well established there. Stuart McCloskey did get a game in Twickenham, but it's going to be hard to break up that mix. Yeah,
we were saying, like, it's wondering whether we even bother talking about it, but it has to be a factor in terms of his impact off the bench at some stage, maybe, or during the 3 games, or at some stage he might be someone that will have to start, because of that versatility factor. He possibly won't be on the bench. One of the 3 tests, you could have a combination of McCluskey and Payne. I don't know, but then you're leaving out Robbie Henshaw. It's hard to see how it'll work, because I don't see him dropping either of Payne or Henshaw.
We all want to see Payne at 15, but realistically?
Yeah, no, there's no point. Well, you can talk about it, but it's just probably not going to happen. I think what they have offered is really good in terms of just that read and that communication stuff. Now, maybe there are elements that when Zebo, we can talk about Zebo in a second, when he steps in at first receiver, if we could have one of those 2 guys stepping in at first receiver every so often, it could take a little bit of that pressure, and we see a little bit more of that playmaking ability that we used to see back in the O'Driscoll days. But I think everything else they offer is really solid and effective. So I don't see it changing.
Yeah, let's talk 15. So Zebo's come in there and he's been really effective in attack. Rob Kearney, I don't think he hasn't been at his previous levels. I don't think the injury has helped him. Like, he's had that kind of recurring problem with his hamstring. We don't even have real clarity around what's happening there, but he doesn't look as comfortable an attacker. He's getting tight to his 13, and then you see Zebo on the pitch and you realise, wow, he's giving them real extra width, and he's actually interesting that opposition 13. Rather than just being able to smash in on the centres, he's actually broadening the whole pitch. Are those attacking strengths worth giving up for the solidity, I guess, that Rob Kearney has?
Yeah, but I think you're going to South Africa and you're going to need that aerial skill. Like, Zebo's quite good in the air as well, but Kearney's still second to none there, and that's a massive factor that South Africans will be putting it up there. You're right. I think it all depends. It's like we're saying for the pack, it all depends on Rob Kearney's form when he comes back in the Pro 12, because he knows now he's under a bit to find that form. But I would still lean towards Rob Kearney for those reasons of the solidity and aerial skills against South Africa. We just can't afford any small defensive errors to let them into the game.
Yeah, he needs to get back fit and show that kind of attacking stuff, because he did have that to his game, and I think it's maybe faded a little bit. And the final wing positions, Trimble and Earls had a good tournament. Schmidt has mentioned Tommy Bowe a few times during the tournament. He said he's a guy who's coming back in. Again, if you're looking at physicality and aerial contest, then Tommy Bowe's a really exciting guy. But also Luke Fitzgerald's in that mix as well. Again, hard to call. What's your?
Again, it's the form issue. I would be leaning towards one of those 2, at least Luke Fitzgerald or Tommy Bowe, because they have that kind of Anthony Watson pace, that electric finish as well. Probably a little bit faster than Trimble or Earlsy. So one of those two, I would say, got to be in there. And Luke Fitzgerald does give you that extra option as well, that kind of Simon Zebo ability to step in, confidence, look for it off and threaten. So maybe just to freshen things up on the wing, one of those two, Fitzgerald or Tommy Bowe, depending on form again, to get in the mix there. Make a call. I'll go with Luke Fitzgerald. Okay. If he can get in there. Luke Fitzgerald and probably Trimble on the wings.
Interesting. Loads of interesting calls for Schmidt ahead. Overall, Six Nations wraps up with a third place finish, as Schmidt kind of predicted. Lots more challenges ahead in 2016 and exciting times. Thanks to Trevor for coming in.
No worries,
really enjoyed your insight as always. Thanks. And thanks everyone for watching. We'll catch you soon.